What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the DFS OGs podcast, week 6. And this is a podcast bringing together about 25, 30 years of daily fantasy experience. And that's why we are the OGs. I am your host, Chris, Beermakers fan Prince. Let me bring in my co-host here, as always, my fellow OGs, Head Chopper, Notorious. Guys, let's talk about week 5 real quick. What went right, what went wrong? Derek, let's start with you. Welcome in. How was week 5, brother?
Yeah, a lot went wrong, including Doug Baldwin. That was pretty brutal for me. But I was bailed out by David Johnson and Zach Ertz in some late garbage time. So ended up being a slightly profitable week, which, half hour before the game's ending, I did not think that was even in the realm of possibility.
And let's bring in the creator of the newest Hitler video. If you didn't see it, get to Twitter, Chop. I got to give you that was classic. I enjoyed it. I'm still laughing at some of the parts, especially Dean and Costco. So go check it out if you know what I'm talking about. But you want to hit on that, Chop, week 5, whatever you want to do. Welcome in, my man. How are you?
Yeah, good, man. Week 5 in the NFL wasn't all that great, but it was week 6 for college football. That was much better for me. So it's just been kind of going back and forth. If I have a good Saturday, I don't have a good Sunday. If I have a good Sunday, I didn't have a good Saturday. So hopefully I piece it together and get both days right one weekend.
That's the goal. Let's put it all together this week. So I had a pretty down week myself. Not going to lie. It was a little rough, a little too invested in some players that we'll get to. I'm going to use a whole bunch of pour one outs here and third and wrongs, but any pour one outs to get us started, Chop?
Yeah, he mentioned Baldwin. I was a little bit on Baldwin. I tell you, my pour went out, and he didn't necessarily have a terrible game, but man, I had a dynamite roster going into the afternoon, and if I could have just had a big game out of Nelson Aguilar, I could have done some real damage and maybe got like a really high finish and saved everything. But he got shut out the first half, got a few catches in the second half, but nothing very good. And so Aguilar, man, I guess it's been a while since he's had a good game. I guess his time has come to pour one out for him, because with Jeffrey back, I don't know if he's going to make as much of an impact the rest of the year, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I had high hopes for him as well. I had a couple decent rosters and stacks of that game, and he kind of torpedoed those. So it's Ertz, the guy getting the job done. Derek, can you pour one out before we get started here?
Yeah, I'll go with Julio Jones. I'm sure I'll be back on him again this week. But, perfect game script. They got down huge, and he basically had a goose egg, through almost 3 quarters. Then I was like, okay, one last drive, chance for some more garbage time production. And they bench him. They bench him and Ryan on the last drive of the game. Just unreal. The guy can't find the end zone, so hopefully it'll change this week.
All right, it's another week. The Rams get it done, the Chiefs get it done and continue to roll, and Julio Jones can't find the end zone. That's been the story so far. So, again, I got a lot of pour ones out. I'm going to pour out for Brandon Cooks. I mean, the dude literally died on the field, and we were on the XM show. We had a caller call in, and he was upset about Brandon Cooks, saying he could at least caught that ball. And then he went on to say something about, I guess concussions hurt. Probably. Something along those lines. It was one of the funniest things I ever heard. But Brandon Cooks took a big blow there, and we'll see if he's ready to return. But we'll talk about that when we get to that game. But let's start with Thursday night football. We have showdown pricing. Apologies for recording a little late, but, hey, we get to talk about the showdown slate. So let's do that, guys. Let's dive in. Chop, I know you do these videos each and every week, so I'm going to get started with you. We have Philly. We just talked about Nelson Aguilar. We have the Giants. That captain spot, very important. So start there. Who are some of your guys you're looking at for that spot?
Well, they would come from – the only guy for the captain spot I'd consider on the Giants is Odell at this point. So I would go there. For Philly, everything else would come from Philly. For some reason, I'm kind of leaning towards like a Corey Clement for some reason. Well, I know Ajayi's out now, but I know they've got a lot of guys there, but Clement's probably looked the best out of all those guys. So I could go that route. What I've come to realize in those captain spots in those showdown slates that it's not necessarily you don't want those high price guys, even if they're going to score. I mean, they have to really be like head and shoulders above everybody for them to pay off. So I kind of been trying to find some lower dollar guys to get in there. Maybe Clement fits the bill this week for the showdown captain spot. But otherwise, Wentz is going to make for a good play. Zach Ertz against the Giants too. That's a good one. But you could go that route. I'm probably not too keen on Aguilar or Jeffrey for some of the reasons I mentioned earlier. But then on the flip side, Saquon's okay, but Odell's going to be the real guy here I want for the Giants. I don't necessarily want to mess with Eli or any of these other guys.
Yeah, in this game, the total's been bet on. I think part of that is the weather. It looks like it may rain there, so we'll keep an eye on that. Obviously, we're still, 36 hours out from that game, so not going to go off the weather here. But Derek, thoughts on that captain spot? Any sneaky plays in this game? I see a couple guys down here of intrigue. Who's standing out to you on Thursday night?
I'm not going to lie to you. These showdown slates, I've had zero success with them, so I'm probably not the best guy to be giving advice on these. But, yeah, I do think if you're playing the captain spot, I like Odell quite a bit. We know the Eagles have just been awful against receivers. Jalen Mills played pretty well last week, but still one of the most beatable corners in the NFL. So I like Odell quite a bit. You can go right back to Ertz. He's had at least 10 catches in 3 of the first 5 games of the season. So those would be probably my 2 spots for the captain spot. I do think you could look at the defenses, maybe the kickers, if you're looking for some value. Unlike Chop, I think Wendell Smallwood's probably going to be my preferred option in the Eagles' backfield. He's just looked pretty good so far this season. It's still a mess, and I would only use him in tournaments. But I think he's fine. And that's about it for me. Janoris Jenkins should be able to, shut down Alshon Jeffrey. So if you want to look at Aguilar again, I don't think a lot of people will go that route. If you're looking for a cheap guy that should see targets, who knows if he'll do anything with them. But the target should be there.
And it sounds like it's going to be a mix of Smallwood and Clement. One of the beat writers or Philadelphia Inquirer reporters said that's what he expects. And then little news on this game, Evan Ingram was back practicing, but he has been ruled out for this game. So don't utilize Evan Ingram, obviously. And one guy down below, we talked about the running backs, and I think a guy that may get an opportunity here is Josh Adams. He's only 600, hasn't done a lot, hasn't got a lot of carries, but he's going to have a role. We know they like to utilize multiple backs, so very risky. Don't know that I'd put him in a captain spot, but maybe in a lineup or two to save some money, you can roll with Josh Adams. All right, let's move on to the main slate, Derek, and we start with probably the best game on this slate as far as fantasy-wise goes, Tampa Bay and Atlanta. I mean, probably 2 of the worst defenses in the league. I don't even know if it's probably. These are the 2 worst defenses in the league, and the total reflects that at 57.5 the spread, right around 3 or 3.5. So this is that age-old question. Who's not in play in this game?
Yeah, you got to love this game. Falcons just dreadful defensively, so I think for cash games, I'm just going to be locking in Jameis Winston. For tournaments, you can take a number of different routes at quarterback, but definitely my favorite point per dollar quarterback in the slate. And look, we love running backs against the Falcons, so I want to get your guys' take on this. We got Peyton Barber, Ronald Jones, and then Jacquizz Rodgers, who's probably the best pass catcher of the bunch. We know the Falcons just really bad against pass-catching running backs, so I want to get your guys' take. I don't have a strong preference one way or the other, but the last 3 running back ones against the Falcons have scored over 30 fantasy points each. Mike Evans, really good track record against the Falcons, 5+ catches in each of the last 5 meetings, 6 touchdowns during that stretch. Okay with Godwin and Deshaun as low-owned game stack plays, but probably not going to be making my main lineup. And Brate's going to see a bump with O.J. Howard out. On the other side of the ball, Matt Ryan at home, always in play. Going to be avoiding the backfield, though. Last week's time split, Freeman saw 28 snaps, Coleman 27, and Ito Smith 12. So for me, I'm just going to be avoiding that situation. Julio, it's time for him to find the end zone. It's time. He's had 10 career touchdowns against the Bucs. The next highest for him is 5. So definitely has a good track record against them. We know Tampa Bay awful against receivers. So I'm going to be loading up on Julio once again. I'm sure I'll get burned once again, and he'll be my third and wrong for next week too.
Definitely my third and wrong for this last week. I said I guarantee he finds the end zone, and somehow he doesn't in a 700-point total. So, but the numbers against Tampa, you're right. And this is a team he's played very well against. You kind of hope everyone bails and you get low on Julio. He's under 8K on DraftKings. So one situation to keep an eye on, I agree, Cameron Brate is a lock and load. But surprisingly, O.J. Howard back at practice today, Chop.
Yeah.
So in a heavy knee brace, they said. So we'll see. Something to keep an eye on. If he's in, that kind of dings the value on Brate a little bit. Still minimum price on FanDuel. I still think you can play him over there regardless, but certainly something we want to watch. Chop, same question. Who's not in play in this game?
Who's not in play? For me personally, Calvin Ridley's not in play. I'm not going that route. I know, Derek would disagree with that, but I'm going Julio here. I'm going to fade Calvin. Sanu, I usually don't play Mohamed Sanu anyway, so I'm not really worried about him. But, yeah, Julio's the guy over there for Atlanta. That's the guy I want. I really don't even want the running game right there with Freeman back, so weird. But I like Ryan, and I like Julio, and that's probably where I would go on that side of it. And Tampa Bay, I don't mind crab legs, man. I'll take Jameis. I'll take Jameis this week, man. He's got some good weapons there. Don't want the running game. One of the questions was football related that they asked was, could you play two Tampa Bay running backs this week, seeing as how Atlanta struggled against the running back position? And I would say I wouldn't even play one of these guys. I'm definitely not playing two of them in the same lineup. I wouldn't even play one of them. I don't want any part of that running game. But Jameis to Mike Evans looks really good to me. If not Mike Evans, then maybe you take a shot on Godwin. But with Jameis back, I think Mike Evans is going to really step up his game here and start to shine. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think Deshaun had a ton of success last year with Jameis under center, so probably a good fade for me, Deshaun.
Yeah, I love Evans. I love Bray. Love Winston. You're going to see a lot of them in my six-pack video that's out. But 3 touchdowns for Evans in 4 weeks. Bray, we know, has a great chemistry with Jameis Winston, and Jameis himself is way too cheap for this matchup. I mean, what a matchup to come back to the Atlanta and inside in the Dome. I think there's a lot of positives here. Derek, to answer your running back question, I think I'm with Chop. I mean, Jaquiz Rodgers is basically phased out with Jones there. Jones has shown no ability to catch the football. I mean, he looks like he's lost out there. So he's the one, if I have to take a shot, I get your argument. We want to pick on Atlanta with running backs, but I don't know that I can do it even at 3,900. But if I have to pick one, he's the guy. All right, let's move on. Carolina and Washington. We got about a 44.5-point total here. Washington favored by about 1 here at home. Chop. This looks like a good spot for Cam Newton. When you look at the pricing on DraftKings, 6,100 feels like a steal for Cam.
Yeah, he was a little bit disappointing last weekend. So, yeah, I wouldn't doubt if he steps up and has a big game here. He's always capable of winning a GPP with his skill set. So, don't mind Cam. Great price tag. You're right. Could go that route. He's one of the guys you don't have to pair with a wide receiver, even in GPPs. Although you could take a shot with Funchess, but I prefer to pair him with McCaffrey, if anybody. I think you get just as much production there. They say Greg Olson's coming back, but I haven't played Greg Olson in about 2 years, and I don't think I'm going to start in this game. So for Carolina, I like that connection, Newton to McCaffrey, and that's about where I would go. That's about where I'm at every week on those guys. And then on Washington's side, they put up kind of a dud on offense against New Orleans, but I kind of expected that on Monday Night Football. So I think they bounce back here a little bit more. But I don't see it being a big Adrian Peterson game this week, although, well, actually, Peterson's banged up with his shoulder, and Chris Thompson had to leave that game on Monday night too. So, man, could we possibly get some Capri Bibbs here, man? You never know. He was a real stud in college. I remember that. So maybe if that's the case, I wouldn't mind playing him. And for sure, he's got to be better than P. Ryan was. P. Ryan was terrible when he was in there. So I might take a shot with Capri Bibbs. Paul Richardson's banged up too. So, and Josh Dotson missed last game. Yeah, I guess we're gonna have to hold off on this and make sure these guys are who's playing and who's not. But if those guys were beat up or not playing, Jamison Crowder would be okay. But Maurice Harris looked pretty impressive in his limited time there on Monday night. But the one thing I can't get over this year is where's Jordan Reed at, man? Alex Smith is supposed to be checking down to Jordan Reed a lot, I thought that was his thing. And I can't find Jordan Reed anywhere. Needed the guy to get me about 3 points on Monday night. That's about it. Just 3 more points. And that's all he does is catch one little pass for 20 yards. That's terrible, Jordan. So until further notice, I'm probably off of Jordan Reed here, man.
Yeah, I think it's a good buy low. I mean, people are going to bail. I agree. I had him in some good lineups. I was expecting more, especially with him playing from behind. And it was like, didn't do anything. So Harris, I do like minimum price. We'll see if Doxson's out again. But he's cheap all across the industry, and like you said, got a lot of targets. But I think the Carolina side there, Greg Olsen returning, DJ Moore starting to play more of a role, Curtis Samuel playing more of a role. Does that concern you for a guy like Christian McCaffrey's usage?
Not too concerned with McCaffrey's usage. He's just been a bell cow. Everything they said in the preseason has come to fruition. Averaging 17 carries per game, 8 targets per game, so for a total of 23 opportunities, which is awesome. 25 opportunities. And, I mean, he's just basically playing every snap. And the best way to beat the Redskins so far this season has been through the run. They're ranked 30th in DVOA against the run this season. They've been pretty tough against the pass, other than Drew Brees last week lit him up a little bit. But I actually don't love the spot for Newton. I think he's fine, but there are some other quarterbacks I prefer. So McCaffrey is really the only guy I'm looking at from Carolina. On the other side, definitely want to monitor the running back situation. If Thompson's out, I think Peterson becomes a little more interesting. If Peterson's out, Thompson becomes more interesting. And then if they're both out, I agree with Chop. Go with Kabri Bibbs. Probably just be a plug and play at that point at $3K on DraftKings. And I'm a little higher on Jordan Reed than Chop was. The Panthers, one of the worst teams in the NFL when it comes to defending tight ends. I know Reed put up a stinker last week, but prior to that, he had quite a few targets each and every game, 8 and 7 the previous 2. He scored double digits in 3 of the 4 games so far this season. So I think he's a nice buy low candidate.
All right, let's move on to the next game. And this line kind of surprised me, Derek. We got Seattle at Oakland. I know Oakland has been playing well, but Seattle, the favorite here going into Oakland, about a 3-point favorite. Nice total here, 48.5 at most spots. So Seattle looked good. They hung in there against the Rams. They put up points. Everybody besides Doug Baldwin managed to get into the game. So any interest in going back to the well on Doug Baldwin, who burned a lot of people, including myself, 1 target, 1 catch, 1 yard. Can we go back to the well because it's still a good price here on DraftKings?
Yeah, it's a good price. It's a good matchup. I was hoping he would be a little bit cheaper. He's actually $200 more expensive, but that should help lower his ownership. Probably going to be 5% owned in tournaments. He did play 88% of the snaps. He ran a route on every single one of Russell Wilson's dropbacks. So, Wilson only threw the ball 21 times. Perhaps that had something to do with it. They just didn't really need much from Baldwin. So I think it's a nice bounce back spot for him. I'm also okay taking a flyer on Vanette. Played 83% of the snaps last week with Disley out. Oakland has always struggled against tight ends. And then their running game is kind of interesting as well. Chris Carson, really cheap. So far in the CVR rankings here on RotoGrinders, a lot of the experts have him as one of the best point per dollar options. It's probably a spot where he lets everyone down, but he has looked pretty good the last couple of weeks. Still don't want to play Russell Wilson. He's just not running enough for me. He's only running on 3.6% of dropbacks, which is by far the lowest of his career. On the other side of the ball, I think, Marshawn Lynch revenge game. Maybe they try to get him a touchdown. Gruden will be into that. Lynch is going to want to score against his former team. So don't mind taking a shot on him. And Jared Cook's just been a target monster so far this season. After letting everyone down last week against the Chargers, who was the best team in the NFL at defending tight ends, I think he bounces back in a big way.
Another third and wrong chop. Amari Cooper. What the hell do we do with this guy? 1 catch, 1 target, 10 yards for Amari Cooper. Look at the game logs. 2, 29, 3, 24, 2. So do we get a good week here?
Yeah.
Plays well in the even weeks. This is an even number. Do we dare play Amari Cooper?
I think you could. Why not? I know I only do 1 season-long fantasy draft every year now. And it's just because it's some buddies from back home, and we've done it for like 12 or 13 years. No, wait a minute. Woof, man, it's 2018. We've done this thing for like 19 years now. That's unbelievable. But that's the only one I do, man. And I somehow drafted Amari and Jordan Reed over there. So I'm like 1-4. I'm looking bad. But that's all right though. Amari is a guy I think. I don't mind Amari, man. I'm gonna play him. I'm going to run him in some GPP lineups just about every week, and this week is no different because he has the ability to explode any game. So I'll take a shot on him. And I'm with the Marshawn Lynch call. It's really tough to play a guy like that on DraftKings because he just doesn't catch the ball enough. But on a site like FanDuel or one of those sites that don't quite reward the receptions as much, I might be have quite a bit of Marshawn Lynch. I think everything shapes up here. He's running good if you watch him. Still running super powerful. Oakland is at home. I know he loves playing at home more so than the road. And then Seattle just not impressive on defense. It's just a defense that's just waiting to get exploited at some point here. And then the revenge factor. So, yeah, man, I might be pushing the like button on Lynch on the sites where they reward touchdowns a little bit more because I would have a hard time believing he doesn't get into the end zone in this game. I think he's going to get there. So I like that one. But I would pass on Derek Carr, and Jared Cook's okay, but Jordy Nelson, Martavis, I'll pass on those guys. Russell Wilson, I'm with Derek. I'm not gonna play Russell Wilson. He's just not running the ball this year. Chris Carson continues to look good. He's still getting some carries sniped by Mike Davis and even Rashad Penny a little bit, but Mike Davis stole his touchdown last week. But Carson still looks powerful when he's in there. Doug Baldwin, I don't know, man. We had question marks on Doug Baldwin coming into the year when he said he would never be more than like 85%, and it really looks like he might not be 85% this year. So I don't know. The price is right. I guess you could GPP him up, but that's a tough sell right there. I don't know. It's just tough to wrap my head around Seattle right now. You don't want to play Russell. The backfield's kind of weird. Doug Baldwin's hurt. Like, it's just tough to take anybody there. So, yeah, I like the Nick Van Eck call, though. Damn
that 85%. He gets 1%. One reception, one target, 1 yard. 1% for Doug Baldwin.
That is weird, man. He was so good. Maybe the injury is just totally. Maybe we really didn't respect that enough.
I guess that one's confusing still. But anyway, going back to this game, Jalen Richard's intriguing to me on DraftKings, 3,400. A guy that's been involved in the passing game there, so a cheap PPR play. And then those running backs for Seattle, like you guys said. 44 for Carson, 41 for Davis. I think those are intriguing plays as well. But Doug Baldwin, I'm done with you, sir. So if he has a big week, I'm going to miss out. No big deal. Let's move on. Colts and Jets here, Chop. We got a total of 45 in this one. Jets favored by about 2.5 or 3. Jets look good. I mean, they took it to Denver. So another home game for them against another bad defense. What do we do with Isaiah Crowell? I think that's a big question coming off that big game. Was it a fluke, or is it something we can believe in?
I think you play him. He's similar to Marshawn Lynch. He's not going to catch the passes, so you want to get on the site that gives you a little bit more reward for touchdowns and less for receptions, but he's absolutely in play. This is what are we in, week 6 now? Like, he's had a couple of blow-up weeks. We're only about 5 weeks in. He's had a couple of them where he could have won you a GPP with that performance, including last week. So, absolutely. And then he showed talent in Cleveland, but clearly he was just caught up in that big mess out there that was Hugh Jackson and that dysfunctional crew. So I think Crowell's perfectly acceptable here this week, and I'll be playing him some. He's a young guy who's still got some juice in his legs, man. So I'll play him. Darnold, it's a good matchup for him. I guess you could go there. Enunwa should bounce back with a better matchup than he had last week. Robbie Anderson did come through for us last week. He was a very nice, like 1% owned guy. That was very, very, very nice of Robbie to deliver there. So, but I think we go back to Enunwa this week and then pass on Robbie Anderson. So that's where I'm at on the Jets. With the Colts side, I think Andrew Luck's shown that he can prosper in all this. You know, the last game, he's without T.Y., without Jack Doyle, who he still came through again in a tough matchup. So I think we could go back to Andrew Luck. He's still going to be without T.Y., still going to be without Jack Doyle. Eric Ebron's still going to be chalky. I don't know if we want to go there with the elevated price tag, but kind of looking at his receivers here, thinking Ryan Grant's okay. Chester Rogers was really good last game, but Zach Pascal could be the guy who steps up, and he was the guy who stepped up 2 games ago and did a real good job. So one of those guys is going to have a really nice performance at a low price. We're kind of leaning towards Pascal right now.
Yeah, Andrew Luck, 121 pass attempts in the last 2 games. So you know you're going to get volume there. And did you guys ever think you'd see a day where Eric Ebron's the highest priced tight end on a slate? I mean, I didn't even think I'd see that on like a 3-game slate, let alone a full slate. No Gronk, no Kelsey, no Kittle. So we're left with Ebron, Derek, at the top of the heap. But I agree with Chop. I think Luck is intriguing. I like Naheem Hines on DraftKings, but it's that Jets side. Do we trust Darnold? Do we trust Robbie Anderson? Do we trust Crowell? Where are you coming out on those guys?
Yeah, what a time to be alive for Ebron being the most expensive tight end. All the good tight ends are either in the primetime slate or not playing this week. Kelsey, Gronk, Ertz. So yeah, if you want to pay up, I certainly don't mind Ebron. He burns us more often than not, but seeing a ton of targets, leads all tight ends in air yards in the slate, leads all tight ends in red zone opportunities. And yeah, it sounds like Hilton and Doyle are going to be out again. So I certainly don't hate the play. Probably not for me on DraftKings, maybe over on FanDuel. Naheem Hines is interesting, especially if Marlon Mack is out. It sounds like Mack could return, but if he's out again, Hines is a guy that I'll look at. He had 15 carries last week and then 9 targets. If he gets that kind of workload, I'll play him against any defense. On the other side of the ball, yeah, great call by Chop last week on Robbie Anderson. I think it's a good week to go back to Quincy Enunwa now. Definitely a better matchup for him. Matched up against Chris Harris last week in Denver, so no surprise that he had a down game. And do you guys think Isaiah Crowell's 219 rushing yards will be the highest rushing mark of the year?
I say yeah. That's a pretty good game. That's a pretty good game. 200-yard. We don't see 200-yard games very often.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
The guy's got talent, man.
And the craziest part is Powell still out snaps him and still out touches him, and it's cheaper than him. So I don't know. I might take a shot on both of them in tournaments, but overall, this game I don't have a ton of interest in. But I do like the cheap wide receivers for the Colts if you're looking for some volume at a good price point.
Now, like Amari Cooper, but we flipped the script here with Isaiah Crowell. He's good in odd number weeks. 25 in week 1, 5 in week 2, 19 in 3, 1 in week 4, and 33 last week. So maybe we play Amari Cooper this week and we fade Isaiah Crowell. Well, who knows? But that's his game. Those big runs. He did it in Cleveland. He had big weeks, and then he disappeared. But another good matchup here. So I agree. I think both those running backs certainly in play. All right, Derek, speaking of running backs, this game's intriguing. Let's go to the next one. Arizona, Minnesota. Minnesota at home. Big favorites. We've been in this boat before, but Latavius Murray looks like he's going to draw the start here. I don't think Dalvin Cook is going to be back. Am I crazy to be interested in Latavius Murray is my first part. The next part, David Johnson is under 6,000 on DraftKings. They continue to drop his price. Can we play him in this spot as a 10-point underdog at Minnesota at 5,900? So those are my big questions. Latavius and David Johnson, what do you got here?
Yeah, I'll start with DJ. There's pros and cons for him. If they are trailing like we're expecting, they are big underdogs, and maybe he'll see a few more targets. He hasn't topped 4 targets in any of the last 4 games, which is a little bit concerning, but he's definitely getting the workload. So at this price point, I don't mind playing him. Probably not a core play for me just because if they get down big, who knows, maybe they'll bench him and, let Chase Edmonds get a little more run. He's terrible, by the way, at least catching the ball. Just kept dropping him last week as well. And then on the other side, yeah, Murray, I think you can play him. Had a really tough matchup last week against the Eagles. Now has a really good matchup against Arizona. If you look at DraftKings, the OPRK, the opponent ranked 32nd so far in fantasy points allowed to the running back position. So, yeah, I'm kind of with you. I like Latavius a little bit. I know he doesn't catch a ton of balls, but he does have 9 receptions in the last 3 games. So, maybe he's going to be a pretty nice value at 4,700. And then as far as the passing games, not a ton of interest in Arizona outside of Ricky Seals-Jones. He's going to be my bold call of the week. I'm going to say he's on the Millionaire Maker winning lineup.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That is bold. That is very bold.
A lot of air yards, which I know Chop loves, with Josh Rosen under center. Has 10 targets the last 2 weeks. And Minnesota, one of the worst when it comes to defending tight ends. They're 31st in DVOA. I do think Rhodes will probably take away Kirk. Fitzgerald just hasn't done much this season, so he's got to throw to somebody. Maybe it's David Johnson, maybe it's Seals-Jones, but I like him at 2,700. And then Minnesota, I'm just worried about the game flow. I love how pass-happy this offense is, but I don't think they're going to need to throw it around all that much this week. So probably only using Thielen and Diggs in tournaments.
If you have to pick one of Thielen and Diggs, I think that's another question. You know, we have Patrick Peterson on the other side. Which one do you like? Because you got Thielen at 85, Diggs at 76. Pick one.
Yeah, so I'm hard-headed, but at the start of the season, I said Diggs would be better than Thielen. I'm going back on that. Definitely like Thielen over Diggs season long. I mean, Thielen's on pace for 150 receptions, 1,900 yards, and 9 touchdowns on 211 targets. 3 of those would break the all-time single-season records. So yeah, I'll take Thielen.
Not bad. So, Chop, over to you. So, same questions. Latavius Murray, to me, more interesting on FanDuel. We've talked about touchdowns being more important over there, but I think he's in play on both sides. DJ, under 6,000. Thielen or Diggs? And if you want to hit on air yards, Chop, now's the time.
I want to pass on air yards. That's what I want to do. But, I fully expect – so it wasn't like 2-3 weeks ago we were sitting here with Minnesota as the big favorite at home and Latavius Murray super chalky. When that happened and the carpet got pulled from under us on that game, I fully expect Minnesota to not take this thing lightly at all and to really come in here and to know that they messed up that game a few weeks ago and then they've had some rough games since then and that they need to get back on track here. And I fully expect them to blow them out. So I think we can play Latavius Murray. I think he actually responds here in this game. It's a premier matchup. This is not the same Arizona defense it used to be. I'm looking – at some of their game logs from earlier this year, they gave up a big game to Adrian Peterson. They gave up a huge game to Mike Davis for Seattle. Breida was on his way to a monster game last week, and when he got hurt in the first quarter. So, yeah, I think this could be a good spot here for Latavius Murray. And I'm just like Noto. I do worry about the game flow here for Cousins and the receivers. If it is a blowout, I don't think they'll be passing in the second half. That's a worry I do have with this team. But if you made me choose, I would definitely choose Thielen this week, even though I'm also, for the long term, I want Diggs over Thielen. But for this particular game, I want Thielen over Diggs. For Arizona, I'm not high on any of these guys. I know the price tag looks good on Johnson, but that was a premier matchup last week. I don't expect him to have it that easy this week. I'm not trusting Rosen on the road against this defense. Receivers are a little bit suspect. Yeah, if you want to, Ricky Seals-Jones. Yeah, somebody. I mean, unless they get shut out, that means somebody's going to move the ball and get some yards and maybe get a touchdown for this team. So maybe it is Seals-Jones, but generally speaking, I don't want the quarterback, the running back, and the receivers aren't really doing it for me. So maybe it is Seals-Jones, but it'll more than likely be a fade for me from there for the Arizona side.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is, like you said, I don't think they're going to overlook like they did Buffalo. I think they were clearly looking forward to the next week. They made a mistake, but I can't see Arizona doing a lot of damage in this game. So pretty much a fade for me, but I will be heavy on Latavius Murray. All right, let's go to the next game. And we got a divisional matchup here, Chop. Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. And I know these are two offenses playing extremely well, but we know – Ben Roethlisberger on the road generally is not as good. Has not thrown for over 300 yards in any of his last 4 trips to Cincinnati. Only one multiple touchdown game over that time. And then Andy Dalton, same thing. In division, he's not good. His last 4 games against Pittsburgh, 234 yards, 157 yards, 59 yards. I think he got hurt in that one. And did have one 300-yard game back in 2014. So I think a lot of people are going to look at this as a stackable game. I see more of a 17-14 type of slugfest. Where do you come out on this one?
Oh man, you're really selling Vegas. You're sticking it to Vegas with that prediction. They got it at 53.5. So, I mean, I could see it going either way. It's really tough. It's a really tough call here on the Cincinnati side. Man, Dalton's look good. I like the way his offensive line this year is protecting him. I like things I've seen from the new offensive coordinator. So. It could get into a shootout. If it does, then Dalton could be fine. Joe Mixon looks great. I love Joe Mixon, and even though it's not an easy matchup here, I would still play Joe Mixon. I'm looking at the wide receivers. I think this is the week A.J. Green kind of snaps out of it now. I know that Joe Hayden is back to shadowing now, so he's probably going to try to shadow A.J. Green, and Joe Hayden did a good job last week. But I would take – A.J. Green's one of those guys I would take in just about any individual matchup in the NFL. outside of maybe Patrick Peterson or maybe Jalen Ramsey. Those are about the only guys who I don't want to play A.J. Green against. You give me one-on-one with Joe Hayden all day, I want A.J. Green on my roster. So,
but wait, Chop. He's playing at home.
Oh man, let me look on Twitter real fast. See what Britt says about this. I don't think I can play him at home. Britt says
we go back and edit that part out maybe.
Don't play him at home. No, I mean I really like AJ here, man. I think this is a blow up spot. Like, he's been so quiet. He'll go so under the radar this week, and like I said, man, some receivers I don't care how good you think the other guy is on the other side there. You just don't want to leave him one-on-one, and I don't think Joe Hayden's the guy you want to leave A.J. Green one-on-one with, so I'm good with that. Ben on the road is a little bit suspect also, but for that price tag, I'm probably not going to play him, to be honest with you. James Conner looks okay. Price tag also creeping up. This may be the last real James Conner game we have, though, if we expect Le'Veon Bell to come back in 2 weeks, so maybe they give James Conner a little going away party here, man, and send him out with a few touchdowns. Don't think you could go wrong with Antonio Brown or Juju any particular week. And I was shocked to see the ownership on Vance McDonald last week. That's definitely not a guy I want to go to at that kind of ownership.
Third and wrong, Vance McDonald. Oh, my goodness. What a disaster that was. So, yeah, I like the call on Connor. You look at the Bengals, they're bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed, period, in targets, in receptions, in yards to running backs, and we know Connor will get the usage in that role. So do like that call. I still worry about the quarterback. So Chop very high in this one, Derek. I'm kind of low on it. Vegas very high on it. Maybe I'm the outsider here. What do you think, Bengals and Steelers?
Yeah, I'm somewhere in between you two. Ben on the road, not going to play him, just far too expensive for me. I like the James Conner call quite a bit. Forced 12 missed tackles last week against the Falcons. If you want to look at Le'Veon Bell, he's only done that one time in 66 career games. Really dumb stat, but I saw it and thought it was interesting. Antonio Brown, so he hasn't topped 16 fantasy points against the Bengals one time in the last 6 meetings. They, for every reason, I don't know if they bracket coverage him or what, but hasn't been able to get it going against the Bengals. You mentioned Big Ben struggling against them as well. So maybe that has something to do with it. So I'm on Connor. I might mix in some Juju. Might mix in some McDonald since everyone will be off of him now that he had that one bad game. Then on the other side, yeah, it does look like Hayden might shadow A.J. Green. I liked last week what the Bengals coaching staff did. We talked about Xavier Howard probably shadowing A.J. Green, and they ended up using Green 45% of the time in the slot. So that helped kind of steer some of that coverage away from A.J. Green, ended up having a pretty big game against the Dolphins. But I'm still on Tyler Boyd. I think he's going to be my guy in this one. If Hayden shadows, maybe they don't run Green in the slot as much. So I'll take Boyd over Green. And then, yeah, I'm with you guys on Mixon. 22 carries last week, 4 targets. Coaches said that he's probably going to split time with Walton, but that obviously wasn't true. So love the spot for Mixon. He's only at $7,500 on FanDuel.
Nice cheap price for sure. I think the running back's very much in play there. So I'm betting the under on that game clearly, but I think this next game I'm going to be on the over, and that's Cleveland and the Chargers. The total sitting at right about 44.5, 45. Chargers favored by 1 here on the road, but Derek, I think this could be a shootout. I love the Cleveland offense in the spot, especially Baker Mayfield. 2, either Jarvis Landry and Njoku, I think, is a solid play. And Callaway is back in our lives with the Rashard Higgins injury. And we know the usual suspects on the Chargers, but I am very high on this one. Agree or disagree?
I'm high on the Cleveland side of the ball. Definitely impressed with Baker Mayfield. Not too interested in the running backs here. I know Carlos Hyde's just getting a ton of touches, but San Diego got their best run stopper back last week in Leggett. I think he's going to definitely help them improve their run defense. So I'm with you. I like Njoku. He had an 11% target share with Tyrod. That's boosted up to 19% with Baker under center. And with Casey Hayward being outside, he'll probably be on Callaway most of the game. So I like Landry in the slot once again. You just can't find a guy that's going to get double-digit targets every single week that has decent ownership at that price point. So I'll be going right back to Landry. I also like Njoku. And, yeah, you can definitely pair him up with Baker Mayfield. For San Diego, I just don't know. I mean, they're going on the road against a very good Cleveland defense. They can get pressure on the quarterback. They've been good against the run. So while I do like the San Diego running backs, I just probably a little too expensive for me when it comes to Melvin Gordon. Maybe it's a Keenan Allen week. He's kind of due for some positive touchdown regression. So if I'm bringing back my Cleveland stack with anybody, it's probably going to be Keenan Allen.
I'm going to pour one out here for the city of San Diego, Derek. You continue to call them the San Diego Chargers. I do it as well, but you just keep sticking that knife in them San Diego fans, and their team left behind. So
Apologies.
We'll pour one out for the city of San Diego here. Chop, Chargers, Browns. What do you got?
Yeah. So first off, I'd like to say, how come we call positive regression? How come it's not progression? Let's call it progression.
I agree.
Keenan Allen's due for some positive progression here in his touchdown rates, man. Come on now.
Well,
I know this.
It wouldn't be positive progression, wouldn't it? Just be progression.
Yeah, that's what I'm just pointing out the positive, because you had to say positive regression.
You're going to anger a lot of people with that.
I know. I'm going to get the smart people are going to get on me, but that's what I like to do. I like to keep them on their toes. But wow, where do we start here? LA, Cleveland's actually a pretty tough defense, a very unsexy defense to stack against. So, but you could always play Rivers 5.9K on DraftKings. That's a good price. Probably a spot where I avoid Melvin Gordon. I tried not to be as much on Melvin Gordon going into last week. I ended up getting him on more teams than I wanted because I just couldn't quite get up to Gurley, who was incredibly high priced, but we'll get into that later. But Melvin Gordon's a guy I want to fade here. On the road against Cleveland, kind of a tough defense. I don't think the game flow is necessarily going to be great for him. I know he's been a big part of the passing game so far, but I don't know. I just don't like Melvin this week. Keenan looks good. Mike Williams is going to be a threat to score touchdowns. You can get Mike Williams at 4.3. That's a real good salary for him. So that's where I'm at. I think this is a good passing game for LA. On the Cleveland side, I'm with you on Jarvis Landry. Like that call. Don't like the running backs, just like you said. And Njoku, man, he's about ready to blow up.
Yep.
I was sitting here about 3 weeks ago wondering why Tyrod couldn't get him the ball, what was going on. Slowly but surely, Baker's getting him more and more involved in the offense, and I guess he's about to take off here real soon. I wouldn't doubt it if it's this week, so I like Njoku a lot.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Chargers have been good against tight ends so far this season, but the targets that he's getting and red zone targets I think will be in play here. I like him a lot. So a lot of ways you can go with Baker, Landry, like I said, Njoku, Callaway. On the other side, Austin Eckler continues to get it done, guys. 4,200. It pretty much puts up double-digit fantasy points each and every week. I don't think he's going to win you a tournament, but another guy that can provide you some salary relief and can help out in the passing game. So 2 games left here in part 1. Thank you for tuning in to the DFS OGs podcast here on RotoGrinders. Let's finish up our last 2 games, guys. Buffalo and Houston, Chop. Not the most sexy game on the slate, so let's dig out some plays out of this one. Or not.
If I'm looking at Buffalo, the only thing that even vaguely interesting to me might be McCoy, and I don't even know if I could go there. So with that being said, this may be the week I go back to the Houston Texans defense. I know they're terrible, but Buffalo's just – boy, Josh Allen's just not good, and he doesn't have receivers to throw to, so I just don't know how they get it done here. So I kind of like the Texans defense. For Houston, the more I thought about this early in the week, and we're still early in the week, I don't know, man. I can't believe I'm going to say this because Derek's going to get mad, but I might go Lamar Miller here. He's back.
Oh,
he's healthy. He's back. He's healthy. They're at home. This may be a game they can actually get a little bit of a lead here and run the ball a little bit. He should be well rested after taking the game off last week, basically. And, Deshaun Watson's got tons of weapons here to throw to, so I wouldn't doubt if they can jump out to a lead and then let Lamar have a few second-half carries and maybe even get down there and vulture a couple touchdowns inside the 5-yard line. You never know when that happens, but there's a ton of weapons on Houston to spread this thing out between Hopkins, Fuller, and QT. Defenses are going to have a very, very difficult time containing that box. If Lamar just gets some carries, he could be in good shape here. So that's kind of where I'm going. And then those 3 receivers, you can take any one of them. They're all good. Hopkins obviously a stud, but priced like it. And QT's still cheap. You can go that route. He's a real PPR magnet.
Yeah, the dude's got 22 targets in his first 2 games, so clearly going to be a big part of this offense and still underpriced at 4,600. So like him a lot. But let's talk Lamar Miller here because Derek spent 5 years on the Titanic, Chop. He jumps off, and then you're the shark in the water now jumping on the ship. So, Derek, Lamar Miller, What are your thoughts? You said you were done with him. Are you going to hold true to that?
Yeah, why are you doing this to me, Chop? You know
Hey.
it doesn't take much for me to be all in on Lamar Miller.
It's like a good stock, man. You got to know when to get in and when to dump that some gun.
So, like you mentioned, he missed last week, so should be a little healthier this week. And Deontay Foreman isn't going to come back until week 7. So, if you're playing Lamar Miller, if I'm playing Lamar Miller, this will be the last chance that he gets for the rest of the year. So, I actually don't hate the call. We know the Bills just been awful against the run for each of the last 2 seasons. And, yeah, positive game script for sure. You can pair him up with the Texans' defense. I haven't seen the number updated after last week, but Josh Rosen had taken sacks on 15% of his dropbacks before last week. So Watt and Clowney, they're going to be monsters in this one. And I like the Kiki QT call, 25% market share, 94% snap rate in his 2 games. Just far too cheap for the number of targets he's getting. But I do worry about the game script for DeAndre Hopkins. He'll probably get his in the first half, maybe the first 3 quarters, but just not sure how much they're going to be airing the ball out late in this game.
And he draws the matchup. And Tre'Davious White's been very good for Buffalo, so I think you'll see a lot of that. But still a low total in this game, not a lot to be excited about. Watson says he is going to play, but the total at 41, I would pick and choose your spots rather than stack either side of this one. Last game for us here on the early slate here for part 1. Derek, we have Chicago and Miami. Chicago coming off the bye, 3-point favorites here in Miami, but another low total. It opened up at 43.5. We're down to 41.5 in some spots. So not a lot of excitement in this one for Vegas. What about you? Dolphins and Bears.
Yeah, I want no part of this game. We saw Tariq Cohen have that big game against the Buccaneers before the bye, but Jordan Howard still out-snapped him. I'm pretty sure that was the first time I played Howard in like 2 years, so I won't be going back to that well. I think people are going to be chasing the points with Cohen. Don't really want to play Trubisky on the road. Don't love any of his pass catchers here. So Chicago's a fade for me. Then Miami, yeah, I mean, Drake finally got it going a little bit last week, but they were playing from behind. I think Frank Gore is going to mix in once again. Don't trust any of Tannehill's receivers. So for the most part, I think I'm just going to be avoiding this one.
So defense is in play for you then?
Yeah, Bears defense for sure. Don't have a ton of respect for Miami's defense, but I suppose if they're cheap and you need them in a tournament, don't mind it.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by Jordan Howard. I want to believe I was very high on him going into the season. Chop Miami, bottom 7 against the running back position. Cohen coming off the big game. You got to think Howard going to go overlooked here. Your thoughts on that running back situation and the rest of this game to wrap us up?
Yeah, Miami is a fade for me against a tough defense like this with plenty of rest. I don't want Miami. They're not looking good right now, so I'm pass on that one. Chicago, I'm with you. I think you could go Jordan Howard or Trey Burton. I think one of those guys is the path here. The receivers, not so high on. They kind of split things up quite a bit there. Allen Robinson, most likely to catch a touchdown, I think, but probably not going to put up a huge game. Trubisky is – last time we saw him was, his big 44-point performance, but that was against a defense that wasn't even trying to play. So I think it's a little bit less likely he has a decent game here. So I'm with you. Howard, Trey Burton, that's about where I draw the line.
All right, that'll wrap us up here for part 1 of the DFS OGs podcast on RotoGrinders. Guys, any final thoughts here on the games, on anything? We'll be back, obviously, with part 2, where we'll talk about the rest of the games. But anything to wrap us up here in part 1, Chop?
Nah, I mean, part 1 was part 1. It's flying by, and we got bye weeks and everything. So we got limited games here, so we'll do the best we can with it.
Derek, final thoughts here, part 1 of week 6.
It doesn't seem like there's going to be a ton of highly owned guys this week, so it could be a week just to mix it up a little bit. We have a lot of the big names in the primetime slate. So, yeah, I think it could be an interesting week to just take some of these lower-owned, shots and tournaments.
Yeah, it seems like a lot less games to stack here this week as well. So I think there may be a different build. We'll get some better games here coming up moving forward here in part 2. But part 2, we'll answer some questions. We'll talk about the games, obviously. We got 5 games to cover, 3 afternoon games. We'll hit on Sunday night, Monday night, and look at it from the primetime slate, the MVP spots. We don't have pricing, but we'll take a look at that. But we're going to get to some user questions, and a lot better questions this week. We got a lot of them. We'll try to get to as many as we can, and we'll answer life's important question. do defenses matter? So make sure you come back for part 2. But for part 1 here of the OGs podcast, I am Beer. Thank you for joining in, for listening, for Chop, for Noto. Guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Come on back for part 2. But for part 1, we're out. We'll see you. All righty. Let's give it a minute. We got a gap.